I'm Dana K. White, author of How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. And I am talking about my very best strategy for getting dinner on the table super duper crazy fast. What we're talking about today is pre-cooking ground beef in bulk so that I can freeze it so that I can get any meal that the recipe starts out with. Brown the ground beef with some onion in a pan and drain the fat and then blah, 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 whatever. I can do that insanely fast because the meat is already cooked and I don't have to deal with the mess. So many times it's the idea not of the cooking, but of the mess that I'm gonna have to deal with that discourages me from cooking at home. So this lets me deal with the mess one time and gets me through like sometimes 8-10 meals depending on how much it is that I pre-cook ahead. Okay, so that's what we're gonna be talking about today. That is my best strategy for doing that. But let me go ahead and get started. What I like to do when I pre-cook a bunch of ground beef is I like to do one meal of something that's not just, you know, the browned crumbled ground beef, because right now the meat is the easiest to deal with. I don't have to thaw it because it just came from the grocery store, so it's not frozen. It's the easiest for me to deal with it now and doing that, and then the rest of it I brown for lots of other meals. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here first. I know, just in case anybody, that was clean. That counter's clean, I promise. Just cleaned it. Let me just be super clear about something before we get started. This is not a recipe, okay? This is simply a strategy. Anyway, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I gotta season them first. All right, so I have tonight's, what we're gonna have, which is not gonna be anything fancy at all. This is a night where I'm doing more work on getting this prepped for future meals. I enjoy making a recipe that is more complicated, is beginning to end, make sure everything's crisp perfectly and all that kind of stuff. I really actually enjoy that. Problem is, that's not practical on over half, probably 2/3 of the evenings in our home. I don't always feel like doing all that much work. I mean, like, that's just not something I can do every single day. So doing this allows me to have super fast meals on many nights, and then on the nights where I feel like doing something fancier, then I can do that. But I don't end up stopped before I get started by the idea of, oh my goodness, cooking is gonna take forever. So it's basically all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna break up this ground beef in a large pot, and I'm just gonna brown it as I'm going ahead and cooking tonight's dinner anyway. Sometimes we'll just have something with browned ground beef in it as well, but crumbled browned ground beef as well. Okay, so I generally add minced onions. If you like to chop onions, that's great. I'm not a huge onion fan, but I like a little onion flavor, so I do some minced onions. Again, of course, this is not a cooking channel, not that anyone thought it was. Okay. So I'm gonna add those because I would say every single recipe probably that I do, I hate to say every single because, you know, then what if not? But pretty much every recipe I do says ground beef and onions. Like brown the ground beef with some onions in it. And so I just go ahead and put that in there. So here's the way how I use this ground beef. I am going to freeze it after it has completely cooled. I'm gonna put it in the Ziploc bag. I don't wanna put it in there too soon when it's too hot because it will actually, you know, melt the bag and all come out the bottom. And then I'm gonna let it finish cooling in the refrigerator. And once it's completely cooled, then I'm gonna freeze it, okay? I don't wanna freeze it while it's still a little bit warm, because as long as it's warm, it's gonna be releasing moisture. And if I freeze it before it's completely cool while it's still releasing moisture, then I end up in a situation where I have, it's really frozen hard together. It's gonna be easier to deal with later if I've cooled it completely. What I do with this ground beef is I put it in casseroles. I put it in soups, taco soup. There's a really great vegetable ground beef, a vegetable soup that has ground beef in it. What I do with those is I just go ahead and make the soup, and I take frozen chunks of pre-cooked crumbled ground beef, and I just put it into the soup itself, okay? Because doing that is going to thaw and warm the meat without recooking it. If your reaction to this is, oh my word, I don't like, meat that's been frozen after it was cooked. Totally get that, but it's most likely the case that you are re-cooking it while you're defrosting it. You know how sometimes you defrost something and you're like, oh no, it cooked a little bit? That can happen really easily with pre-cooked meats. So instead, what you want to do is put it into something that has some sort of a sauce or whatever. So, think about if tacos and spaghetti and some sort of casserole or whatever, if those are standards in your house, great. This is gonna make those go, I can get spaghetti done if I'm using a jarred sauce. I can get spaghetti done, I can get tacos done in less time than it would take me to get my shoes on and grab my purse and get into the car. Now granted, I'm the person who can never find my shoes or my purse, but still, I'm just saying, it's not even, quicker than going through a drive-thru. It's even faster than that. Just last night, we had taco salad, and I was late getting my grocery pickup. So I came in the house, and I was like, I'm gonna have dinner ready in 10 minutes. Y'all, I had tacos ready in 10 minutes, because I took the totally frozen ground beef, put it in here with the water, okay? It's gotta have that liquid, and the taco seasoning, put the lid on here, and then just broke it up as it went. And it was just basically thawing and reheating within the liquid of the taco seasoning. It was not recooking, okay? And I was able to have dinner done so fast. So it just is something that takes away the excuses, and it eliminates so much ongoing mess. Yes, tonight is gonna be a frustrating amount of mess, but knowing that I'm gonna be able to make dinner 8 more times without any mess at all is hugely motivating to me. So I just encourage you to try it and see what happens. Try it with just, one package of 3 pounds of ground beef. If you normally use 1, just do 3 pounds and freeze 2 of them and see if it makes it that much easier for you in the future, because this is such a great time saver and excuse buster. And I'm all about the excuse busting because I'm amazing at the excuses. So you'll see that this is just starting to brown. I'm just gonna stir it pretty regularly and get what's browned on the bottom up. It's gonna start getting brown, and then once it really starts to release a lot of that juice, it's gonna start really cooking in the juice, and it'll get brown a lot faster there. I have no idea what temperature I'm looking for, but I think these are good. In the future, I will be sharing a video about pre-cooking chicken. I usually do that in the crock pot, about pre-cooking rice, and one of our favorite meals that we usually do on that first night when we like the rice to be fresh, and then how we use the rice later when it's frozen. But if you are like, okay, I think I want to try this, I'm not sure. I do have, it is the least fancy mini course you will ever find. It's $16, I think. You can go to aslobcomesclean.com/make-dinner-happen. And in that, I talk you through 2 weeks of meals, where the first night you are making one of our favorite meatball meals, while you also brown ground beef, and then you do chicken and rice on those first nights, and then you use those ingredients to be able to throw together the next 2 weeks of meals. So that's what it is. It's 2 weeks of meals using this method, not because they're the greatest meals in the world, but so that you can figure out, oh, okay, this is how this works. I can totally do this. I can now use these strategies on the meals that my family eats all the time. Obviously, you eat whatever you want. If you go to aslobcomesclean.com/make-dinner-happen, you can see the list of ingredients that I use, the list of meals, so you can know, is this something for my family? No, I don't have a vegetarian version. I know there's some great meal planning services out there that do that. This is simply something that people had been asking me to do for years. I wrote a chapter about this in How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind, one of my books, because meal planning is a major source of stress with home management, right? Like if you're the one who is in charge of food in your house, it can be a major frustration and source of stress. So this is a way to really take a lot of that stress away. So that course is just what people had been asking for. They said, can you use your teaching style to really break down using this strategy? So that's what that is. So see, it is starting to really get brown. To wash this off, since I touched it with my meat hands. So here's what I'm gonna do for draining the ground beef, okay? So I take a large piece of foil. I get the extra long kind. So this whole thing is covered. And then I'm gonna take my colander and I'm gonna set it on top of the bowl, like that, okay? Once this is all browned, has a lot of fat, which is really gross, and I gotta get that drained off, okay? Which I'm not gonna have to ever do again on these, which is great. But what I use to get it out of there is my pasta strainer, because it's metal, so it can handle hot stuff, and it's got a hole in there because I want to drain as much as I can. I want to leave as much in this pot as I possibly can, is basically what I'm saying, okay? He's in there. And then any additional fat, grease that is on the, not any, but you know, the other fat and grease is going to drain down through the colander into that foil, and then I'm gonna let that cool. Sometimes I'll stick it in the fridge if I have room in the fridge for that. And once it is cool, then I can just wrap it up. And sometimes I'll put it, if it's not completely solidified, I'll put it, once it's cool, I'll put it in a Ziploc bag or something like that to put it in the trash. And this right here is what it looks like after 21 minutes. Okay, so this is not a hugely long process. Let it drain as much as it can. Okay. Or as much as I'm willing to wait. And then I'm going to dump it in there. Okay. And when I dump it in there, it's going to continue draining as it cools. Right. So I'm just going to keep doing that until all of this is in there. Every time I just kind of move it around, I want to release as much of that steam as I can. That is my very best strategy for eliminating excuses, eliminating a whole lot of cleanup for future times by dealing with a bunch of ground beef at one time. So I can have super fast meals with super easy cleanup for a long time in the future. So when it is cooled off, which is when it's no longer like, you know, putting steam up, but I don't want it to sit much longer than that. Because I don't want it to be actually cold at all. It's still very warm, but it's not hot. I am going to put some in this bag. Okay, oops, doggies, mommy dropped some. Key to this is going to be, now I'm gonna put it in the fridge so it gets completely cool before I stick it in the freezer. Set a timer on your phone for tomorrow morning to stick it in the freezer so you don't forget and let it go bad in there. Anyway, but I am going to, I can put more than that in there. When I freeze it tomorrow, I am going to press it flat like this and freeze it flat. Okay, what that's gonna do is when it is frozen, I'm gonna be able to break off whatever I need, okay? If you have them divided up to be in 8 bags so that you know that each bag has a pound, great. For me, because I'm much more of a, how much should I put in this? I don't know. I just break off a chunk. And then people in my family can do things like make themselves just a small one-person batch of tacos or nachos or something, and just break off a little bit of meat and put it on there, okay? So I'm gonna freeze them like that.